Well, good Sunday morning, everyone. I'm WCIA 3 meteorologist Jacob Dickey here. We're going to talk about some severe storms that are already happening this morning, and I just wanted to jump on and talk about them for a little bit. I don't think we're going to stay on for a whole lot of time here, but we'll just give you an update. Again, the time right now is 10:21. We had said there would be some morning storms that could bring some hail and wind. That is the case here this morning for areas north of I-72. For the bulk of us, we have to wait until the 1 to 6 o'clock window as the cold front sweeps on through for our main chance for severe weather. And we will take some time talking about that. Let's get started here. First off, in the chat, make sure things are working. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you've had any storms this morning, if you have any reports, we've had a number of them already out there. And so that's something that we are continuing to look at here. We're going to start talking about a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings that are in place as that happens and update you on that. So first off, our activity this morning focused in Livingston, McLean, and Ford counties. We have severe thunderstorm warnings, McLean County until 10:30. That may get extended based on where storms are just a little bit. Ford and Livingston counties until 11:15. The threat here this morning for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. Let's drop our text boxes there and just talk about where these storms are at. So you can see here, this right now is where the main activity is. It's just crossed I-55 in northern McLean County there between Lexington and Chenoa. And that right there is a hail core. It's lifting east-northeast. So it'll be heading towards Fairbury and Forest and Chatsworth, as well as towards Strawn. These storms down a little further to the south may sweep through places like Sibley, Melvin, Roberts, and then it'll continue on towards Piper City as well. This warning set does not include Bloomington Normal. Storms passed just north of town. There was quarter-size hail reported north of Carlock from them. It does not include the Route 9 corridor. It's north of 165. On the Ford and Livingston County side, it does not include Pontiac or Sonneman or Dwight or Flanagan, Cornell. It does not include Gibson City or Paxton either. This is going to be for just areas just north of Gibson City. So you can see the warning there cuts off on the north side of town up by the golf course, continues across just north of Elliott, and then north and west of Paxton there, heading to the east-northeast here. These storms moving quickly, 55 miles an hour. There have been some storm reports with this here. And so far, most folks saying not much happening where they are, but we have had a little bit of wind damage reported in the Peoria Metro down towards Pekin and in the Morton area. There's been some power lines that are down. There was some hail reported also in Pekin. And then this right here was some quarter-size hail. That's the core now that continues to work its way off to the east. So there may very well be some of that with this storm as it moves on through. These storms this morning also have been pretty hefty lightning producers, quite a bit of that, and some real rumbly thunder with them too. You can see here over the last 30 minutes just how much there has been, and I'll loop that too, moving pretty quickly here. Even storms further to the north towards Dwight producing some thunder and lightning, and we've had a few other reports of some earlier storms too. They're noisy. Those storms really rumbling, and some of that's because there's actually an inversion in place. That inversion is good for us, keeps the tornado threat really low with this, but it also does allow for that thunder to really travel. So I had a couple of messages saying there is some rumbling thunder this morning. One lady messaged me, she said her dogs jumped under the bed, and that's not surprising with the way things look for this. So this here again for McLean, Livingston, and Ford counties, the hail threat primarily what we are looking at. And I'll pop up the hail size to see if we can get anything. Takes a second for the data to populate, but I have a feeling we'll see a little swath here from Pekin through the Carlock area. Right now, there's Lexington showing a little bit there. And let me fix that to the swath, and maybe we'll see just some spotty. There you go. There's that nice little trail there. Tremont to Mackinac, towards Carlock, just north of Bloomington at Kappa, towards Lexington, and carrying off to the north and the east. So you start seeing those blues like that. We're typically seeing those turquoise colors around an inch, maybe a little bit more. And I do think today we could have some quarter size, maybe a little bit larger with these storms that are moving on through. Draw a line. You can see the track this is taking here. That's going to take it into Fairbury, Forest, Chatsworth, Piper City, and then eventually towards places in northern Iroquois County, Gilman, Onarga, Danforth, Ashcombe, and then off to the east there into the northeastern part of the county. Still got some time, but they're moving at highway speeds, 55 mile an hour, and so that continues to move. Just a nice thin track of some hail that continues right there, and so that may pass near or just north of Watseka. Not going to be an issue, I think, for Paxton, for Loda, for Claytonville. I don't think it's going to be an issue for southern Iroquois County, southern Ford County, but we still could get some gust of wind with that a little further down the line. And that's something that we're watching here. Again, right here is where some of that strongest wind is showing up at the leading edge. But you can see there's some more wind on the leading edge here down to the south and east. And so still, maybe you don't get severe warnings, severe warning criteria for that wind of 60 mile an hour, but we can still see some 45, 50 mile an hour gusts a little further down the line as it continues to move off to the east. Again, kind of resetting the board here. We'll put back the radar and show you what's going on. Last couple of hours, these storms, they developed out here in western Illinois and have been tracking off to the east-northeast. And we finally got some warnings out here towards Fulton County, then through the Peoria Metro, and now into our region. And again, I do not think that these storms are a tornado threat as of now. We've talked about after 11 a.m., maybe that threat starts to materialize if those storms linger. And we'll keep an eye on that here. One way we can assess that is by looking at our temperature plot here. And I'm going to pop that up real fast so we can get that here. So sometimes the temperatures will give us a little clue where that instability is. I think it's still to the south. Instability, though not necessarily dependent on surface temperature. Sometimes you can have a lot of instability in the 50s out there. It depends on what the air aloft is doing. So we can see here 67 in Effingham right now, 65 Springfield, 64 in Champaign. And I checked some of the graphics over here just to see where the instability plot is. I might be able to bring that up for you in a second here. That may be something that we continue to watch. Don't think there's any fog out there at this point. You can see here, visibility pretty good in most spots. It's a little lower to the north where some of those storms are moving on through, but that again is because of the rain and storm activity and not because of the here we go. I gotta press that button. Let's see if anything happens here. That's not because of fog that's showing up there with the temperatures that are happening. So yeah, there's really no surface instability present. One of the things that we have playing in our favor today to help lessen the severe weather threat, but again, there's some uncertainty with exactly how this plays out because we're just right on that line as we head into the afternoon, is first off, the dynamics of this system. There's a lot of wind shear aloft. There's a lot of lift with the storm system coming on in. It's a really dynamic system, more of a springtime style of system. But the one thing that kind of stands out to me here, here's that jet stream coming in through the day today. If you look here, see this branch of the jet stream that continues? They merge together, which increases that jet stream on the south side of this trough right over us. That gives us plenty of wind energy aloft, plenty of lift. But this right here has actually been pulling in mild air about 1 to 2 miles up. And that's been putting a little bit of a cap in place where storms aren't able to really become rooted at the surface, or they're going to struggle this afternoon to form. Again, it's a fine line. If nothing happens, this will be why, because that warm air aloft is just enough to lessen and limit the severe weather threat. Some of the guidance overnight this morning has suggested maybe that air aloft is not warm enough, and we're warming up a little bit more at the surface to overcome that and allow for those storms to still develop. And so that's something that we are continuing to consider here as we move along. Let's talk real quick here before we go back and talk about the severe weather threat for the day, because we do have a slight risk. We did get an upgrade yesterday on television. I talked about that, and I mentioned that on social media. Perhaps an upgrade to some severe weather would come. They added a slight risk in place here, and that is for pretty much the I-57 corridor and points to the east, kind of the bullseye with what we're looking at here. And that's something that we continue to monitor. The severe weather risk here still low for tornadoes, but it's something worth watching. I don't want to discount that. I think there's a very fair chance that we'll have some tornado warnings in our area as we get to the afternoon. 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. We've had that with storms this morning. We may have a few storms do that again this afternoon. Quarter-size hail and maybe a little localized flooding can't be discounted. Not really worried about that here. We're in that morning phase now. The tornado threat begins to increase after 11 a.m. I think it's after 1 p.m. that we start to see storms really develop, and then we're really going to watch that 3 to 6 p.m. window. That's the timeline that I think is the greatest for us here. Let's show you here the timing of storms here. So here we go. This morning, it's doing a pretty good job picking up on where those storms are. Should be out of here in the next 60 minutes or so. And then we get a lull in activity. We'll be watching this line right here, the cold front coming on through. And storms that form on there, they kind of have this kidney bean shape, if you can see that. We'll see if there's enough instability where they can tap in and take advantage of things. And so that's something that we'll monitor. But you can kind of see them moving across. Any of those storms, they don't look all that impressive, but they may be rotating. And that's where that tornado threat would come through here. So again, 3 o'clock, we're seeing them start to pop. 4, 5, and 6. And they'll move through pretty quickly in our area here, probably a forward speed of 40 to 50 mile an hour, moving east-northeast through our area there. That has led to the tornado risk being increased to a 5 for part of our area here. This area in yellow is a 5. And then we've got the 3 in green, the 1 in blue there. We're at a 5 because we think we're leaning on the side of caution. We think that a couple of those rotating storms particularly hit the sweet spot right here in east central Illinois into west Indiana. And so we'll watch them develop, see them come on in. They'll kind of hit that sweet spot, perhaps give us a little trouble for a few hours, and then exit pretty quickly on the back side there. Then the other thing, too, I don't want to discount this and forget about it, but if you haven't heard about the cold air coming, first off, look at the front passing on through as it does so. It's 67 in Decatur, and then it's 66 in Champaign here, 3:30, 4 o'clock. 40s already behind that front, and look how quickly they drop into the 30s. A very fast drop. The front, by the time it's at the Indiana state line, we may have some freezing temperatures already in West Illinois moving our way, and we'll drop below freezing potentially by 8 o'clock in Champaign-Urbana. And then, yes, there could be maybe a little bit of light snow activity that tries to move on in. Some flurries overnight tonight. Kind of a cold, raw night here. Those actual air temperatures drop into the teens. This surge of cold air does bring some concerns for flash freeze. You got a little moisture on the roads. If they're untreated, it freezes fast enough. Perhaps road crews get out on the main roads, but there could be some slick spots and black ice still. So we're just advising caution on that for this evening through tomorrow morning. It happens quick. You know, if you see your car temperature starts to get to 33, 32, that's when you should start to watch out. And by the time we hit the 20s, anything that's out there will freeze up. So again, some patchy black ice cannot be discounted, especially in areas that are able to get some rain here today. And we'll just kind of keep an eye on that as things move on through. The wind on the backside itself is a problem also. We've got a wind advisory in effect for our entire area. This is for after the front comes on through. We think those strong wind gusts behind the front could be anywhere between 50 and 60 mile per hour, those gusts. Some strong winds here. That's because we've got this deepening low pressure that's lifting through the area and passing on by. You may have heard the term a bomb cyclone or coming on in. So some of the folks like to really talk about that. That's just a word that's used to describe a rapidly deepening low pressure system, which is helping with the warm air this morning, but on the backside really gets that cold air on in, and we see the strong wind as a result. So it would not surprise me if we had a few sporadic tree limbs down, maybe a few power outages. Not a widespread issue, but still possible here for some spots as we go through this afternoon behind the front, and then into tonight and through the day tomorrow. And then when you consider the wind, the last thing about that is those wind chill values here. Look what the future track feels like is suggesting. 4:30, it still feels like the 60s ahead of the front. Feels like 28 in Jacksonville. And by 7 o'clock, it'll feel like the teens and 20s. By 9, 10 o'clock here, we'll see what happens today. But there's a chance by 10 p.m., if there's damage, and I'm in the storm tracker, it will feel like the single digits and teens out there. Some cold air rushing on in. And by tomorrow morning, you can see those wind chill values wanting to drop below zero here. Very rude by Mother Nature, if you ask me. Just the way things are working out for us here. So recapping, we'll go back to our severe storms in a second here. They're continuing to move through Livingston, Ford, and McLean counties. We're in round one. Round one, mainly a hail and wind threat. We've already had a few reports out there. We expected that. Round number 2, after 1 o'clock, there'll be a little break between them. But then really we'll start to watch those storms develop. Prime time seems to be 3 to 6 p.m. Tornadoes possible. Could be some wind and hail as well. It's still conditional. We may not know how rough or how fine things are until it actually gets there. But the chance is there that we could see some rotating storms with some tornado potential moving on through. So just raising the awareness of that. And then after the front, the cold comes chugging on in. Wind gusts will be pretty impressive out there. We get some flash freeze conditions perhaps and some bitter cold air by the morning in our area. let's go back real quick here and just update you on the alerts and updates on that. It's 10:36 now. Storms are in now Livingston County. The warning for McLean County is dropped. We've also trimmed back the southern part of the warning. So you can see here now, Sibley and Melvin is the southern extent here. And the Sibley Blacktop right there. Over to Melvin and north is where that warning includes. It includes Fairbury and Forest and Chatsworth, Straughn, Piper City and Roberts, and Sibley and Melvin north from there for the storm that's carrying on through, and we're continuing to watch it. The quicker we can get this across the state line, the better I'll feel. I don't think there's a threat for tornadoes with this morning. We've just got to keep an eye as we get closer to noon because some of those ingredients become a little more favorable. I don't see anything that sticks out to me as a concern as we look at velocity. There definitely is some wind, though, in there, and so we will be watching that closely. So some strong wind gusts seem likely with this as it continues to move off to the east, and that is what we will continue to monitor here for the next little bit. So here we are, again, kind of getting an eye on things. Got a report of some pea-sized hail in Fairbury. And if you've got other reports, somebody else said there was some hail, some rain. Any of those reports for the Fairbury area are much appreciated as this storm continues to move off to the east. And just kind of evaluating things here on the fly, checking some information from the National Weather Service, see what they're saying. And the National Weather Service is saying that, kind of looking at it, it looks like the threat has come down a little bit on that, but there's still some strong storms. And so there's probably still some penny to nickel size hail in that as it moves on through. So we will watch that and keep a close eye. And then there's that second storm in the right here that's north of Colfax. That'll be kind of coming in more towards Straughn and towards Piper City as well. We'll just keep an eye on that there. Area wide, we don't have anything else going on. This is the main area up here, the northern extent of that. And so that's what we are continuing to monitor. And I'm just seeing some reports from the Pekin area. Tazewell County's got a lot of power lines down from the storm moving on through. So it's had a history of producing some damage with that. Looks like Brittany's saying hail just started in Forest. If you've got a size, that is much appreciated. We would like to hear about that. What size you're reporting, anything you can relate to a coin or something of that would be great. But keeping an eye on the storm. Again, there's not really any instability, but that is something that we'll continue to watch because there may be some instability that's trying to move ahead of this year. And so I'll feel better once we get this batch out, but we'll keep a close eye here for Iroquois County. With that, it's about 10:39 right now. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here for a little bit. I'm going to leave the radar up. I'm going to mute things, and then I'm going to take care of a few things behind the scenes here. We'll have another check coming up at about 10:50 and check on in as we continue to monitor things. So next weather check will be coming at 10:50 a.m. And with that, we will take a quick break and let me check the graphics here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Looks like we're good here. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to get some things adjusted, and I'm also prepping the storm tracker, but we'll be watching this here. And 10:50, we'll check on and see how our storm is doing, see if there's any extension of the warnings, and we'll make some decisions on that. And then, of course, we'll keep you updated. I do have the latest forecast updates right now on WCIA.com/weather and on your WCIA3 weather app. If you have any questions, anything like that, that might be a place that can get some answers for you. And with that, we'll see you here in about 10 minutes from now. And welcome back here. It is 10:50, and we're going to do an update. I was checking out some data and getting some information from the National Weather Service, and I see some of you have been commenting in the chat as well with what's been going on here. So just kind of watching things and keeping an eye on it. This storm continues to show signs that it's trying to weaken here. It's not totally, so there's still probably some small hail now, Piper City to the north there and carrying towards Iroquois County. I'm not sure we're going to get an extension of that warning. This original warning goes until 11 a.m. I think we may wrap up our coverage for this morning here, but we'll still watch behind the scenes. Again, this is the only game in town at this point, just this one severe thunderstorm warning for Livingston and Ford counties, and that storm continuing to move towards the Iroquois County area. Here's Gilman, here's Onarga, Gilman. You've got Ashcombe up here, you've got Danforth in the middle, and then as storms move off to the north and east there towards Donovan, Martinton. That's probably where they're heading for the strongest storms, but they don't seem to be producing big hail, quarter size or larger. Still going to be some small hail with it, don't get me wrong, but just checking with the National Weather Service. And okay, new severe thunderstorm warning coming for Iroquois County. A new severe thunderstorm warning. Well, I take back what I said. New severe thunderstorm warning coming. There was down power lines and a roof torn off an outbuilding in the Fairbury area. And thus, they are going to issue a new warning here for Iroquois County. That's for this storm. Sometimes how it goes. One of the issues we have in this area is that the radar coverage is a little far away. But you can see here as that storm continues to move off to the east, that warning is probably going to be US 24 to the north here. So Ashcombe, Danforth, Gilman, Martinton, Donovan. You've got the Willow Slough up there. Watseka probably going to be in for this northern part here. And also Chemans. They may add the southern part of Kankakee County for places like Pembroke Township, St. Anne. We'll see what that is, but we do expect a new severe thunderstorm warning here based on damage reports that have come in from the Fairbury area with power lines and an outbuilding roof torn off there. And so that is something that we will see pop up here in a second, and we'll kind of watch for that together. That report literally came in the moment that I checked the information with things coming on through. So 10:52 a.m. And it was a well, sometimes it takes them a little bit of time to get that warning drawn. They can usually do it in about 1 to 2 minutes based on that report coming in. And so we should see that pop up in a second here. You know, they'll clean it up and put what they expect on there. But based on what their information came in, we expect a new warning to come out here from that storm as it lifts off to the north and east. The radar coverage, again, not the greatest in this area. We're kind of far. We've got the radar up here that we're using in Chicago. We've got the other one in Lincoln. So they're kind of farther away than we'd like. It's just how things work with the radar coverage. You know, ideally, we'd have a radar in every county, but those things are a couple $1 million a piece. But the coverage good enough to at least assess that there's still some wind showing up there. I don't see rotating winds, which is good news. We don't think that's going to be the case for us here this morning, but we're continuing to watch that. So there's some wind energy that's showing up aloft here. Based on the damage in the Fairbury area, that new warning will come out here in a minute, and we will see exactly where that is. As we take it back a little bit, probably was, if I had to guess, it'd be maybe south of town where the damage occurred. And so that's something that we'll continue to watch for here with the new warning coming in Iroquois County momentarily. Time is 10:54. There's the new warning. There it is right there. So it's going to include Gilman, Crescent City, Watseka, Iroquois, Martinton, Donovan. It's going to include Ashcombe and Danforth. It'll include the Iroquois County Fairgrounds and be moving off to the east-northeast. They opted for a more slim polygon based on where that wind is showing up here on that part of the storm. And so that's going to be moving off to the north and to the east here. And so that's something that we'll continue to watch. Again, new severe thunderstorm warning for Iroquois County. And that warning will go until, get that information to pop up here for a second. That's going to go until 11:45 a.m. The hail threat's down a little bit. Wind gusts still 60 mile per hour possible with that. And that's something that we'll continue to keep an eye on as things move on through. So new warning till 11:45 for Iroquois County. Got a report in the chat from someone saying, yeah, they've lost power in the Fairbury area. And they're between Fairbury and Forest in the country. They've lost power. That is Jaron talking about that. Appreciate your report, Jaron. I don't know exactly where that roof was blown off at. I haven't seen the official storm report come in yet either. But we will check that right now, in fact, and just see. So there's been some severe weather from this storm moving on through. It looks like they have not put the official storm report yet, but that's going to be in the Fairbury area right here where that is. And if you've had any hail or anything like that, let us know as well as it continues to move off to the north and to the east there. But eventually we'll see an icon pop up. You know, they're focused now. They drew the severe thunderstorm warning. Now they're probably working to put in the data that shows the storm report from that. But that severe thunderstorm warning continues as that storm moves in through northern Iroquois County. And then still this warning for Ford and Livingston County. It goes for another 4 minutes. And it probably is going to drop. I don't see any severe storms at this point. It's mainly that core that's moved out. And so that's some good news for us here where things have quieted down a little bit. You know, the Lincoln radar here kind of picks up in that core a little bit here now. So Danforth is next in line. If anyone's watching in Danforth, perhaps Gilman to Ashcombe, the Iroquois County Fairgrounds area, be curious to hear your reports. And we'll continue to watch the rest of these storms as well as they move off to the north and to the east. And just looking here at the wind to see what kind of wind energy. There's certainly quite a bit aloft, but I don't see anything that sticks out to me as immediately concerning beyond some strong gusts that can mix on in. So that's what we'll continue to monitor here for a little bit. Again, there's nothing else happening here. As we take a look at our state temperatures, this, make sure I'm still on here, this will show us more where our front is. We're looking mainly for the cold front to show us what's going on. The cold front's still well off to the west here. It's in Missouri and southeastern Iowa, and we'll come on through. We're already 65 and 67 in Champaign, Effingham, and Springfield. We'll probably have some low 70s out there. We needed to get a more potent afternoon. We needed to get a little extra surface warming. There's been a little sunshine peeking on through, but temperatures are already ahead of where they were thought to be. And so that's going to help our instability a little bit this afternoon. I do want to run through now our future track and some of the data I was just checking here, and I tend to agree with the assessment. You know, I think that tornado risk being a 5 is very warranted based on things now. And where is my future track guy? I think this one will work here. So here we go. I've added temperatures. Again, look at the guidance. The guidance has said, hey, it's supposed to be 63 to 65. We're at 65 to 68 in our area. So we're already warmer here. And as those storms roll on through, here you go, 4 o'clock. This is the line to watch as it moves on through. In fact, I really want to show, let me open this up real fast. I really want to show it without temperatures on there. So let me drop the plots and let me fix the type of radar here. I'm going to put this on that one. So you can see here, 2, 3 o'clock. The cold front now is starting to approach our area. Here we go, 3 o'clock. Starting to see storms develop there. They'll probably develop along and just east of I-55. And look, by 4 o'clock, there's a couple of robust storms within that line there. This may be a little further north or further south. This one might be the one that takes hold. We'll just watch. But the idea is there that we're seeing some of these severe thunderstorms pop up. They'll look like supercells. We typically talk supercells in the spring times. There'll be smaller versions of that, but more instability, allowing for these storms to tap into that dynamic wind energy aloft. And so we think that's why our tornado threat picks up here. And so we'll be watching the I-57 corridor 3 to 5. And after 5 o'clock, then things start to move on out there. And so that's something that we'll continue to watch very closely here. I'm going to put on a different type of radar. The palette's a little different, but it gives us a little more clarity. Again, you can watch some of these storms start to really take off after the 3 o'clock range. And they are kind of lined up here. So they may be a little more wrapped up in some of the linear mode, but there's a few spots that are able to remain more isolated here. The longer things can stay more isolated, the higher that tornado threat is, and then it carries out of here pretty quickly as we move on into the 6 o'clock hour. So really focus the severe threat 1 to 6 for the afternoon. Prime time seems to be 3 to 6 p.m. That has not changed for us here. We probably get a tornado watch today. We probably have a few tornado warnings coming based on the way things look in our area. Where exactly remains to be seen. But again, the tornado threat being a 5 on our scale here is definitely warranted. That 5 now here showing up includes Gibson City, Paxton, Watseka, Champaign, Danville, Monticello, Sullivan, Shelbyville, Mattoon, Charleston, Tuscola, Paris, Georgetown, Greenup, Toledo, Shelbyville there, Effingham, and off towards Robinson and Newton and Casey areas, and then into western Indiana. Kind of the sweet spot where everything seems to be coming together is right locally in our area here, and so that's why we have that 5. I do get some questions sometimes about, hey, the Storm Prediction Center has a 5% risk. You've got a 5 out of 10. What do you mean here? Probability-based forecasting is really tough. You think about our precipitation forecast, a 40% chance of rain or an 80% chance of rain. That often is really challenging to, can be challenging to understand fully. And so we have put a standard 1 to 10 scale that correlates with that gives us some ability to assess areas and be a little more understandable here. A little back behind the scenes knowledge for folks that might be watching, thinking about that. So we correlate ours with the National Weather Service, the Storm Prediction Center, and their risk here. But what that looks like for us here is, we're sitting at a 4 to a 5. We think a few tornadoes are probable. Routine weather updates are needed. That correlates with an SPC risk of 5%. We've got plenty of these 4 to 5 days here. It's up a little bit. It's not the scariest thing ever. The risk continues, though. Should we get a 10% area, that's our 6 to 7, 15%, 8, 9, and a 30% or above is considered a 10. The 30% and above, you can think of some of those big outbreak days. The November 17th outbreak in 2013, that was a 10-day. Those are pretty rare here. We've had plenty of tornadoes, though, on 5% tornado days. The Taylorville tornado in 2018 on December 1st. That was a 5% tornado day in central Illinois. We've also had plenty of 5% tornado days that maybe don't pan out. So, pick your battle on oh, yes or no. We think the few tornadoes are probable. Routine weather updates are needed. And we have a little bit of ability to choose the number up or down based on what we're seeing. And so we kind of thought that the 5 could play out if that instability was just a little higher. And it seems like we're leaning that way. Still doesn't mean we are for sure getting tornadoes, but we think the confidence is there that we probably have that potential coming our way. I don't see us getting to a 6-7. I don't think that's going to happen. But we could have some areas that very short term, that tornado warning is coming, and then you're looking at a 6, 7, 8 if you want to take it technically. But our tornado risk scale, it's based on the SPC outlook. It's that. To give you another illustration on that, on any given day in the wintertime, and I'll double check the number and the math really quick here. It doesn't take much for me to do that. Any given day, the climatology for a tornado in Illinois is less than 0.1%. So, we're at 0.05% or lower on any given day, the tornado probabilities. We're at a 5% chance now. So, if you use 0.01 as the standard, on a day like today, we're 50 times more likely to see a tornado than we are on any other normal day. And so that's what that 5% mean, which is why we kind of lean that way. That's kind of hard to understand, right? It's a little confusing. Like, 50 times more likely. I can't understand that. The scale 1 to 10 gives us the ability to assess things and kind of say, how does it compare and how's it relative to other days there? So we're sitting at a 5 when that comes on through, but that's kind of what we are looking at for there. We do also I did just get an update as well. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a mesoscale discussion for our storm, and they're saying the isolated hail wind threat will continue. The storm is pretty close to the warm front, but beginning to move north of it here. And it still has a supercell structure shape, but it's not likely to produce a tornadic weather at this point here, just because of where it's located. You know, if this was coming through at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd probably have this storm producing tornadoes. But, you know, it's elevated, so the surface instability is not present. That allows us to have hail. That allows us to have wind. And that carries out pretty quickly here through lunchtime into northwest Indiana. So that'll be heading up towards Kentland, Rensselaer, potentially towards the northwest Indiana, Valparaiso, places like that with other storms. But we just have this one storm here that's now through Danforth, passing through Ashcombe, near the Iroquois County Fairgrounds in north, and another cell on the south side there that's picking up intensity at Onarga a little bit, and that'll come through Crescent City and Watseka. This warning here is still in effect. I guess it went to 11:15. I may have mistaken that. They haven't trimmed it back. That probably is coming, and it should drop when we get there. I have no indication that they're going to continue that. Still is this storm south of Chatsworth that'll carry through Piper City, kind of follow those other storms. But again, there's no surface instability to give us a tornado potential with things right now. And we do not expect this morning with these storms a weather watch to be issued. You know, it's conditional threat, it's isolated. And so that's kind of the thinking process on that, which will continue. Looks like still reporting damage in Tazewell and McLean counties there from storms. 2 barns destroyed on Allentown Road. That's from storms earlier. These storms earlier that came on through. There's nothing happening as of yet. Let me put on the regional radar. Let me put on the satellite as well here. So here's the front. No storms formed yet, but that's where they're going to form. And then the interesting thing, too, is that this cold air on the backside, it's very possible that some of us could have a tornado warning, and in 3 to 4 hours, we could have snow falling. Not out of the question. I don't think the snow is a big deal. I think there still is potential for flash freeze, but there could be some snow flurries that are on. Okay, 1 mile north of Route 24, shed has torn off its foundation, swing set twisted and demolished. Multiple power poles gone in Route 2500 East. That is from Jared Blunier. Jared, can you confirm where that is? I think you're in the Fairbury. And is that your shed by chance? If that is yours, or if that's from a message from a friend, let me know, and we will just make sure the National Weather Service has that information as it rolls along here. Okay, so there's a report confirming some of that damage. And that's with those storms that are coming on through. You know, there's a few pockets of some sunshine trying to bleed on through there as well, based on what satellite is showing. So that's what we're dealing with here at this point. Let's go back and see if we can spot any wind. Hard to see much, but you know, we're not talking rotating winds. These are downburst winds coming on through, and they could be pretty hefty as they roll on by. I'm just kind of assessing. You know, I think that wind energy still present. But storms continue to move on through with the northern Iroquois County. In that area. National Weather Service says they are getting reports of a lot of damage in Livingston County from this storm. So let me see if I've got any photos that are in my inbox. A lot of damage reports coming out of southern Livingston County from these storms as they carry on through. This was from straight line winds, and could have been some hefty winds over 60 miles per hour with that. So just checking here. Some photos of some really small hail coming out. I don't have anything that shows anything else. And then let me check the Facebook page. Again, the nice thing about the digital platforms is we can be a little more relaxed here. We're just hanging out. We're talking about things, getting those reports out. It's not as formal as television. I I got a video here of the hail in Fairbury. Some folks saying a lot of hail came with that storm as it rolled on through. Wow, the junior high gym in Forest has been damaged. The roof of the school gym in Forest has been damaged. And that let me get that up real quick. Let me get this photo up real quick, and then I'll show you guys that on the page. So a lot of damage coming in from Forest and Fairbury from the storm here this morning, from strong winds that have moved through the area. Okay, I've got it up. I'm going to show you this photo here real quick, and it's also on my Facebook page. Logan sent that in from Forest. You can see the gym roof has been torn off in the junior high gym at Forest, I should say. That's the Prairie Central School District. The Prairie Central School District in Forest and Fairbury, the roof torn off the junior high gym in Forest area. So you can see that. And that report came in just moments ago from Logan, who sent me that message. So some pretty significant damage coming from storms this morning up that way. And unfortunately, those reports will continue to trickle on in. Lots of power lines down and things of that sort as we continue to watch things here. So there we go. Looking here. And severe thunderstorm warning continues. Get the Slack open here for the National Weather Service. I can get them the picture as well. If you've got any reports too, but we know that the roof has been torn off the gym in Forest from these storms that are rolling on through the area here. Let's get a few things squared away behind the scenes here. There's probably some wind coming through Crescent City, heading towards Watsika and off into the northeastern parts of Iroquois County. Still watching that storm over Piper City as well here, and keeping an eye on things as these storms move off to the north and to the east. Okay, just checking some more information for the National Weather Service here. Severe thunderstorm warning continues for Iroquois County. It has been dropped for Livingston and Ford counties here. And so we're just dealing with this one storm now for our friends in Iroquois County. This storm has a history of producing some pretty potent wind damage. The hail threat seems to be down a little bit, but these gusty storms are racing to the east-northeast. Probably in the next 30 minutes, they'll be out of here. We'll have a break, and then we'll watch that line as the cold front comes through on the backside. Again, in the area, there's not anything else going on here, really. We're primarily looking at Iroquois County here for now, and that is what we'll see here moving on forth as the next 30 minutes. Other than that, we're quiet. 1 o'clock, things start to pick up a little bit. It may be 3 to 6 p.m., that prime time. By that point, Kevin will be in here for the afternoon round. I'll be in the storm tracker, and we'll keep you updated on that as we move along here. Let me pull up the chat with you guys, and I got another message as well. I bet this one's a damage report from a friend. A lot of power lines down, a photo he just shared. And he's got a little video showing quite a bit of power line that have been snapped off and thrown into the field there from the storm as it lifted on through. I'll get that up here in a second. Kind of keep an eye on things. Let me check the chat with you guys, see if you've got any additional reports. Forest has been pretty hard. The junior high roof has been torn off. Lots of trees down in Forest. Some of those reports coming on in. And so that's what we continue to watch here. There's not a whole lot else that's happening. Kind of looking at these storms, 3 storms that catch my attention here. Bring them back full screen real fast. So we've got this first cell right here from Watseka to the north. Another one in Martinton towards Donovan. And the third one here is now crossing the interstate north of Gilman between there and Ashcombe through Danforth. And so any of those storms could have some gusts of wind that pick up as the storm moves on through. Again, we've had a history of wind damage, and just checking more of those reports. Power lines down on 2500 north between Fairbury and Forest. The Harvest Call building has the roof torn off, and the Forest Junior High has its roof torn off. Harvest Call. Harvest Call is the church that is on 24, halfway between Fairbury and Forest. And the power lines are down. So if you're driving on 24 where the road curves between Fairbury and Forest, road kind of gives a little S-jog to the south if you're heading to Fairbury from Forest, right in there, and then the north side of Forest where a lot of this damage has happened. It's near the landing field. Some of you may know about that. Kind of a trail of wind damage there from a couple of miles through the Forest area, through the Fairbury area, as storms continue to work their way on through. So trying to get an accurate assessment on things going on. But again, your reports are helpful in situations like this. And we continue to watch the Iroquois County area. With that storm. And the National Weather Service is getting ready to provide an update here for us. Quite a bit of damage. With things coming on through. Michael Heath is in the building. Some of you may know Michael Heath's name if you watched the TV episode when Kevin had the list of who's on the naughty and nice list. He's our audio guy. We're just doing some digital streaming right now, not on TV. We're here for Iroquois County with that severe thunderstorm warning coming on through. I'd be curious for any reports from Watseka, Iroquois, Donovan, Martinton, Crescent City by the fairgrounds, and Danforth in particular with anything that's going on there. Been an active morning already. The junior high building has been hit in Forest. There is damage on the roof, and the side of the building has some damage as well as these storms continue to work their way on through. Lots of trees down reported in the Forest area, power lines down in the Forest and Fairbury areas. There's also some sheds that have been destroyed in that area from storms that have moved on through. And so that's something that we continue to monitor here this morning. Iroquois County now getting the brunt of it. There's probably some strong winds that are showing up as these storms continue to work their way on through. This storm has produced damage since all the way back for the Peoria metro area, where we've had outbuildings destroyed, power lines down. For our area, there was some hail, quarter-size hail in the Carlock area, and then we've had our damage in Fairbury and Forest as those storms continue to move on through. I've not heard any reports in the Iroquois County area, but Livingston County has their hands full checking on damage and taking care of things here in the Fairbury and Forest area. I haven't heard anything from Chatsworth or Piper City, but we know that there's been a pretty quick strike of some damage in the Livingston County area, which is why our warnings continue here for another 23 minutes in the Iroquois County area. I'm WCIA3 meteorologist Jacob Dickey. The time you're watching right now is 11:22, about to be 11:23, and we're just watching this. The wind threat is the main threat with these storms. They're along the warm front. Sometimes along warm fronts, there can be a little wind shear that helps things to spin. We've not had indications of that. I'll be interested to hear the National Weather Service's survey when all the damage reports are done and finalized in that area, but a swath of some wind damage there. One thing that kind of looking back, you can see here, the area that the damage occurred was right in this area right here. So 2500 North is right here. The Harvest Call Church complex is right there. They've had their roof off. North side of Forest, the high school, the junior high gym has its roof off. There's a lot of tree damage in there. Nothing really shows up that's indicative of big time problems. And I'm going to, saying rotating. But they certainly had some wind come on through those areas right there as we look at the radar this morning. So that's probably going to be some straight line winds. How strong? Seeing some of the damage, we're easily talking 60 plus with that. But of course, we'll get some additional updates in that as things move along. This storm here continues to strengthen. It's now crossing 52 north of Sheldon into the Iroquois and Donovan area. I'm just going to analyze it a little bit more. The warning now trimmed back to account for this storm here. There could be some hail with that. I don't see any signs of rotation. We're still elevated. We're not getting surface instability. That's good news for us here. But the hail size, I'm sure, is probably up a little bit with that storm as it continues to move on through. So it'll take a second. The hail data takes a minute to populate. Would not surprise me if we saw some blues on that. And that's going to be right along the river there, along the Iroquois River, between Iroquois and Sheldon. And I don't know if the data is actually plotting or not. So let me put on the hail swath. That might give us a better indication. It also could be just picking up heavy rain and showing some strong winds moving on through. So here you can see the hail swath. Looks like maybe there's not much hail in there. There may be some small hail. Most of the reports from Fairbury, Forest, and Chatsworth areas were of a lot of really small hail and a lot of it coming down in a very fast period of time. That could be the case, or it could be the case soon. But the wind threat seems to be taking over here, especially with this cell, as it is just north of Sheldon there. And so that's something that we are continuing to watch, continue to keep our eyes on here for the next bit. And just checking the data, quite the damage in Tazewell County as well. But a lot of power lines down in the Pekin and Morton areas. Just the National Weather Service is talking about that. And then I want to see if they have an update from Chicago yet. Storms moving at 55 to 60 mile an hour. We will likely see a warning extended into Indiana for this. Storms are intensifying a little bit further to the south and west, but there's nothing that is imminently concerning with this, but we'll still watch. Onarga down to Delray, Buckley, Loda, Cissna Park, Woodworth, Milford, Watseka, these areas here. Going to get around to some thunder. There could be some small hail, some gusty winds with that. We'll continue to monitor it. The main storm of concern now is northeast of Watseka, and it's this cell right here. Now moving into Iroquois. If it's moving 60 mile an hour, it does not take long for it to get across the state line into Indiana. And once it does so, then we will wrap up our coverage here and just kind of keep an eye on things. At the end, what we'll do is we'll do a check of the rest of the afternoon and kind of update you on that. If you're looking for updates now, maybe you're in Decatur, Champaign, Mattoon, Charleston, Effingham, and you're like, he's not talking about my area. We got some active severe weather, but all of those updates are on our website and on the WCIA 3 app. So you can get that information there, which is some good news for us here as we move along. Other info, just checking in. Again, pulling as many things. Checking your reports as well. Of course, these days there is a lot of information in a short period of time coming. Martinton and Papineau has 2 to 3 tenths. Not much wind, heavy downpour up there. So that's at that northern cell that came on through. But we still have that cell that's in the Iroquois area. And I'd be curious, anyone watching Iroquois, north of Sheldon there? I mean, that's a pretty decent signal for some intense wind and rain. So there could be some problems that are there. And so far, the radar is not really being it's not really suggesting on our end, and I need to make sure that the data is still working. I've got different ways I can check. There might be some 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch hail in that. For whatever reason, my data is not populating in for that area. But that is not going to surprise me with how things are. But yeah, anyone in Iroquois, boy, there's probably some hail coming through there, moving off to the east now. And it's on its way towards Indiana. It should be that way very shortly. Still some heavier storms. Onarga, Buckley, Delray, Gilman moving east, Danforth moving east. They don't seem to have really any hail. The wind doesn't really seem to be there either. With those southern storms, I think this is the last name of the game in town here with what we are looking at. So that is what we are dealing with here. So with that, still getting reports from the Forest and Fairbury area, quite a bit of damage. Let's check power outage numbers while we're at it here. Power outage numbers. There's a couple hundred customers out from Tazewell County and some customers out in Livingston County. Doesn't seem to be countywide, just kind of sporadic in areas as things move along. But we will continue to watch that there. And I'm also just getting a look at some of the, it would not shock me looking out to the west, some of the data, perhaps the Tazewell County damage may have been tornadic. National Weather Service noted a bit of weak rotation looking at the amount of damage at the surface. This is Tazewell County. That may have been tornadic. Can't rule out maybe something accidentally spun up. I tend to think, though, the Fairbury Forest damage is more straight line winds. But photos are early. And, any of those reports that come on in, that will be something that's worth noting and worth keeping an eye on here. And, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether it was a tornado or damaging winds. You had damage from storms, right? And so that's not great. That's not something that, we'd like to deal with. It's unfortunate that during the Christmas holidays, there's quite a bit of damage in that area, but we've had damage reported in the Forest and Fairbury area. And so just kind of checking some of the other stuff. I have not gotten new reports, just trees, power lines, and some roofs blown off of a couple of buildings there. But that's what we're dealing with. So that's what we have. All right, folks, it is 11:31. This warning goes until 11:45. The storm itself, by now, the radar's got a snapshot of it. But remember, it's still moving at 60 miles an hour, and we get an update every 3-4 minutes. So by now, I think that storm's now across the Indiana state line. And so with that, we're going to wrap up our coverage of the storms in Iroquois County. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a last recap on what to expect this afternoon. And then once that happens, we will roll right into a break and then be back this afternoon based on the way things are looking for us here. So with that, give me a second here as I switch the graphics system over. It's going to take a minute or two, but we still have that warning for Iroquois County. That's going to go until 11:45. It theoretically could drop. We'll keep an eye on storm activity that's here in the backside. I don't think there's much wind with that. There certainly is some heavy rain, maybe some gust of wind, 40 plus, but I don't think we're going to see what happened in places like Tazewell County, the Prairie Central School District area, Forest, Fairbury, from storms as they're moving on through. And it looks like I'll be able to control those graphics now. So I do have photos of some of the damage in the Fairbury area. If you have any reports, please send them our way. We would appreciate that. We're dealing with a slight risk of severe weather here. The main threat is coming in this afternoon, 1 p.m. till 6 p.m. We advise that you be weather aware. We think there's a very distinct possibility we will have at least a couple of tornado warnings in our area here. The yellow area is that slight risk. That's going to include the I-57 corridor, north-south through our area, a little bit to the west and all to the east there. Still have a marginal risk here. Storms will start to develop. They hit that sweet spot. They really start to intensify, move on through, and clear out. 1 to 6 is our overall timing in the area. It'll be more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if that makes sense. So the slight risk area, probably prime time 3 to 6 p.m. for us with that. And I'll show you the latest on Future Track here in a second about that. Again, from the storm perspective, the tornado risk is low, but it is definitely there here. And that's focused on our afternoon round. We think from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., we could deal with that, but also have some strong wind gusts. I think the hail threat comes down this afternoon. I'm not as worried about that. I don't think there's much flooding to worry about as well this afternoon. So once these morning storms clear out, I may bump those down, and we'll focus on that tornado wind threat with storms that are moving on through our area. I do want to update real quick the Future Track for you. And it's going to take a quick click of a few buttons. And we'll see how things look here. You can kind of see Future Track tries to get some storms bubbling here. And the question of the day is the instability levels. You kind of see them, they're not much there. They're trying. But once they get into that slight risk area, that's the sweet spot. We see a few things take off. Some guidance says not so much. Some guidance is a little stronger with it. I'll show you the other guidance here in a second, and we'll walk through that. And that just takes me a second to flip over to that, so bear with me here. Here we go with another view of guidance. Again, instability is going to be the key today. The temperatures are a little warmer than initially forecast already this morning. That's a sign, another degree or two is all we really need. And so if we can hold on to that, and the air aloft isn't also warmer, then we kind of get the idea of things being a little more potent out there. So some of the guidance has been leading the way. This has done a really bang-up job with that storm complex this morning. Had it going right through this area and has it exiting here about 11:30. So I feel good about this general guidance. And as we're moving through 1, 2 o'clock, notice here some of the storms trying to fire up. Could we see a storm form ahead? Maybe. Also, this is what stands out to me here. It won't take much, but there may be a half hour to an hour of sunshine ahead of some of those storms that breaks through. And that would be enough to help, I think, with the intensity of some of these storms. Here's 3 o'clock. Now we've got a couple of supercell thunderstorms and maybe 1 or 2 ahead of that line. The environment is favorable for tornadoes if these storms can take hold, and you can really see things start to take off that 3, 4, 5 a time frame as they continue to move off to the east. And so we may have some problems from that this afternoon. By 6 o'clock, it's out of here. It's across the state line. We are done with that. We'll see what kind of damage is left. Of note, see this right here? It's showing up as rain. That's actually probably going to be snow. There could be some snow showers. So we could have areas that have a tornado warning. 4 or 5 hours later, has some light snow falling. That is certainly on the table. Temperature's also really going to drop with this as it moves on through. And so that's something that we're keeping a close eye on. So that wraps up my coverage for the morning here. I'm going to get a few graphics updated. I'm going to get the storm tracker primed. Kevin will be on his way in the next 90 minutes, and we'll be watching the afternoon round of storms come on through. The severe thunderstorm warning for northeastern Iroquois County continues for another 9 minutes. I don't see an extension. I don't see anything new. I think we'll slip through and be fine with that here with everything coming our way. So that's what we will look at and keep an eye on with the afternoon round then, 1 to 6 p.m. Be weather aware. Also, the prime time, the sweet spot really seems 3 to 6 p.m. Our tornado risk is a 5 out of 10 here. This is a relative scale. I'm not sure why my numbers are moving like that, but 5 out of 10, that's going to include Watseka, Gibson City, Paxton, Hoopeston, Danville, Champaign County, Monticello, Sullivan, Shelby County, Shelbyville, Mattoon, Charleston, Tuscola, Paris. It's going to include Cumberland County. It'll include Vandalia, Effingham, the I-70 corridor in our area, and down towards Robinson and Newton. That is where the best chance for some of those storms that are rotating. They hit that sweet spot, the optimal conditions for instability and wind shear, and may give us a couple of tornadoes here in the area before all is said and done. And we will have team coverage for you here as we move along. Thanks for following along this morning. If you have any damage reports from this morning, we would like to hear about that. Just send that to my inbox on Facebook, email the news station, whatever you want. We'd like to hear more about what's happening, and we will keep you updated as well as we go through the afternoon today. I'm Jacob Dickey. Have a nice rest of your morning.